QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021 Memorize Reports. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. We are in our Get Great Guitars practice file. We currently have the Open Windows open. You can open the Open Windows by going to the View dropdown, selecting the Open Windows list. We're now going to look at some reports that we will practice memorizing to a location that we set up in a prior presentation. We will take a look and review the location that we're going to put these reports to. But if you want more detail on how to customize the location on where we're going to memorize the reports, take a look at the prior presentation. We're going to start off with a balance sheet type of report. We're going to go to the Reports dropdown. We're going to go to the Company and Financial. We're going to go on down to the balance sheet. I'm going to go into it this time with the drop-down format. So we'll be in the balance sheet standard. This is our standard type of report. If I change the date to 12/31/21, here we have our balance sheet. Now we'll format it a little bit before memorizing it, but let's consider what our objective is by first thinking about what we will do once memorized. So I'm going to go to the Memorize up top, and once we're done, we can change the name slightly so it'll be like a customized balance sheet in some type of way. And then we're going to go into the Save in the Memorized Reports, where we have our groupings that we customize. We set these up in a custom format. These are not the default memorized groups if you were just to go straight into QuickBooks. If you want to know how to set that up in more detail, take a look at that in prior presentations. So I'm going to then close this back up, and let's look at that location where we're going to put these items, and then we'll go ahead and put them there. So we're going to go into the reports. There's a couple ways you can get into the memorized. You can get the drop down right here, so you got a nice quick look at your memorized areas. I'm going to go to the Report Center for now so we can look at the detail of it. And then I'm going to maximize the screen on the Report Center. I'm going to go from the Standard tab to the Memorized tab. And within the Memorized tab, I want to take a look at, I'm going to edit the memorized list. There's nothing here right now because we have no memorized reports and we have no categories because there's nothing in the categories. The categories will not populate until we actually put something within them. The categories that we set up, if we go to this editing field, are these categories. So I'm going to be grouping our reports by those items that I want to group together that I'm going to give to clients in like the month-end type of reports. So I got a formatting of the month-end reports. Then I want to give my year-end reports, which might be a little bit different. And then I might have internal reports, which I might format a little bit differently for my internal usage, payroll reports, and then you might want to sort reports basically by name, especially if you have multiple users in there, so I can have customized reports basically under the name. So let's close this back out. I'm going to go back to the balance sheet. Now, I'm only going to be working on the balance sheet side of things. We'll take a look at some income statement type reports in a future presentation. If I was to give the reports to somebody on a month-end basis, let's just think of some of the balance sheet kind of type reports that we might be including with them. So I would want the standard balance sheet here. So let's go ahead and customize this. I'm going to customize this by removing the dates and timestamps over here, removing the pennies, making the negative numbers and red for the negative numbers. I won't go into a lot of detail with this because we saw the formatting in a prior presentation. So I'm going to go to Customize up top. I'm going to go to the headers and footers. I'm going to remove the date, time, and report basis. You might want in the extra footer your name, right? My name. I'll just put Robert, the name there, and then that looks good. And then I'm going to go to the fonts and numbers, and I typically will then put parentheses around it, and I want to make them red for negative number, remove the pennies. So we'll do that, and I'll say OK. And so there we have it. So that's going to be our standard formatting. Basically, if I was to give it to somebody else, obviously you can do a lot more kind of formatting with the text and whatnot. But if I don't want to redo that every time, then I can memorize the report. So I'm going to go memorize, and then I'm going to say this is a balance sheet for, I'm going to call it ME for month end. And then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to my client reports, and then I'm going to put this into the month end reports. I want to put these into the month end reports. And I'm going to say, OK. So, and usually you'll hear like a camera thing if you have your sound on, and it'll take a picture of it. So then we're going to go to our Report Center. And then within the Report Center, if it needs to refresh, just go to the Standard tab and then back to the Memorize tab, and it should refresh. So there we have it. So now this category now pulled over. It pulled over because now we have something in it, and now we have our report in it that we can then generate from that report. Now, I might also, if I go back to the balance sheet, then I might say that I want to change this possibly for my internal use. Possibly for internal use, I like to see the pennies. Maybe I don't want the pennies there for external use, but I do for internal use. So I might customize the reports, and then I might go to the fonts and numbers and say I would like to remove the pennies here, and then say OK. And then maybe something like this, a change like this, might be better for me to use internally. So I'm going to go to memorize the report, and then I'm going to say new, and then I'm going to say this is going to be balance sheet internal use, or some IU internal use, or something like that to differentiate it. And I'm going to put this into my internal reports. So I'm going to say OK. And so then if I go back to the report center, now I'm gonna refresh it, go into the standard tab, memorize tab, and now we have the internal reports here. So now when I just open up a balance sheet and I want to work internally to see a transaction, I'm going to go to the reports dropdown, memorize, and then I want to go to my internal reports and then go to my balance sheet here, which is formatted the way I like to see it when I'm entering data. When I'm providing the reports to somebody else on a month-end status, then I'll go to the balance sheet and I'll go to the balance sheet up top, which is formatted so someone else can see it how I want to see it for somebody else. So that's going to be that. Now if I go back to the balance sheet, now I'm going to remove the pennies again. The balance sheet is also a report that we would want in our year-end reports. So I'd want the year-end reports as well. So I'm going to customize this again, and I'll go to the fonts and numbers. I'll remove the cents again. And this is also something that would obviously be in the year-end report. So I would say, okay, let's save this as a year-end, memorized. I want a new one. I'm going to put this, and I'm going to call this balance sheet year-end report. So we got month-end and year-end reports. Drop down, and I'm going to say this is going to go into the client year-end report, and I'll save it there. So that's that. Now we might want a summary balance sheet as well. I might want the summary balance sheet that I would present to others. I might not use it as much internally because I like to see all the accounts here, but I might want to include it for others. So I might go to the reports, company and financial, and go down to the summary balance sheet. The summary balance sheet. And then I'll say that let's make this as of 12/31/21. And then I might adjust this in a similar fashion. I'm going to remove these items to the left. I'm going to remove the pennies, make negative numbers bracketed if there were any. So I'm going to go to the customized reports, and I'm going to go to the header and footer. We'll get rid of the date, time, report basis. I'm going to put the name in the footer so they know who I am. And then we're going to say I want parentheses around this, and then we want them red. And we want to remove the cents, no cents, and then OK. So then this is another one I might want to batch together when I make my month-end reporting that I'm going to show to a client or supervisor. So I'm going to say, let's memorize that one. I'm going to memorize this one to the month-end reports. And I'm going to call it balance sheet summary month-end. And then I want that one in the year-end reports as well. So I'm going to customize reports. Or I'm going to then memorize it again. I want this in new. I also want it in the year-end report. Year-end report, I want to memorize summary report in there as well. So year-end report. So there we have that. Now some of the reports might differ, like comparative reports. So a comparative report, I might want a balance sheet report that compares month to month as opposed to a balance sheet report that's going to be comparing year to year kind of information on a year to date and a monthly. So I might then say, let's go back to our balance sheet here and adjust it. Let's just take a look at what we have in the report center right now real quick. If I go to the report center, back to the standard tab, back to memorized, now we have our month-end report, our month-end summary report. We've got our year-end report and our year-end balance sheet report as well. So there's going to be our information. Notice I'm working on the balance sheet year-end report. So if I made a further change to this report, then I can memorize it again, and I can replace what's currently there. Or like I have been doing, make a new one. So if you want to keep on adjusting that report and save it in the same spot, you can do so. So now I'm gonna take this standard report now and make a comparative report. I'm gonna do this quickly because we saw this in a prior presentation. but I'm going to make a month-by-month comparison now. So I'm going to go to the Customize Reports, and we're going to say that I want to go to the, I'm going to make it for the 2 months ended February. So I'm going to make this 02/01/21 to 02/28/21. And then I want to go down and make this monthly. I'm going to say monthly and previous, prior change, and the percentage change. I'm going to take the filters as good. The headers and footers, I'm going to make this a comparative. This is going to be a comparative balance sheet. So it's a comparative balance sheet. This all looks good. This looks good. Now, actually on the header and footer, I'm also going to remove the, let's say okay, because it's doing something funny here. And I'm going back into it. Header and footer. I'm going to remove the date because that date doesn't make sense anymore because it's a comparative report, and say okay. So there we have a comparative report. Now this one is comparing month by month, 2 months. So this might be something I want to save in my monthly reports that I make on a monthly basis, comparing the prior month and the current month, but not on a yearly basis. So I might say, okay, let's memorize this report, new report, and I'm going to say this is a comparative balance sheet, and I'm going to say month end. That doesn't stand for me, it stands for month end in this case. Month end report, and we'll save that. And then you might have a comparative year-to-year balance sheet that you want for year-end reporting. So I might go to Reports drop down. They have a customized one here, Company and Financial. And then I can go to the balance sheet previous year report. So they basically made this one for us. I'm going to say 12/31/21. And now it's comparing, this year to the last year at this point in time. So that looks good for the way it is. I'll just do my standard formatting to it. I'm going to say, all right, let's get rid of the date, time, report basis, and let's go to the fonts and numbers, and we want to make it the parentheses around the negatives, make them red, and remove the pennies. And we're going to put our name in the footer, Robert, so they know who's doing this wonderful work. And so there we have it. And so now we can save that. So I'm going to go ahead and memorize that. And that would be in the year end. So year end report, saving it to the year end report. I'm going to put that to the client year end stuff. And then we'll save that there. So you can see, even with just the balance sheet, we can have a lot of variance when we start to compare year to year and every month type of report. Do we want a summary report versus an extended report? But they're all basically variations of the balance sheet, right? And so then if I go back to the report center then, and I'm going to refresh this, go into the standard tab, back to the memorize tab. Now I've got my nice reports here that are all set up for us. And if I want to change it to another time period, I can simply click on it, and then it should be formatted. Oh, I should run it. I can run it, and it should be formatted as we need. And if I'm running this now for a different time period, like 01/31/21, then it's going to format it for me and the date, and all I have to do is change the date, and we're good to go. I don't need to reformat things. Also, this can be really nice if you are basically working with someone else. If you have a staff, or if you're and you want them to print and send reports, you can easily tell them, yeah, everything that's in the client month-end stuff, you need to group that together the same way we did last month, order it and whatnot, and send it out in that format. And we'll talk a little bit about that next time, about grouping it, and about how you can put it together and send it out, and how you're going to deal with emailing multiple attachments and whatnot in a future presentation. But this can be one step along the way, so that you can delegate this information to somebody else by them having them in the group. And it also can help you to basically not have to format the reports each month for external use. Helps you to standardize the formatting of the reports because they're in there, and you don't have to remember what you did last month or try to copy it from like a PDF file that last month that you did. And you can have your own internal reports that then are formatted differently, that you might want more detail in for your internal use. And you get to the shortcut nice and easily up top by going to the Reports drop-down, Memorize Reports, and then you've got your report drop-down here. So you can get in there pretty quickly with the drop-down. Once you get used to this, I would start using that drop-down to access the reports in a quicker fashion.